Hey friends, welcome back. Now in the last video we have seen how we can use the from folder option, which is a great option if you have files with the same structure. But if that's not the case, how can we now use this in a more dynamic way? So the way it works is the following. Let me first actually close this for now. Let's close this. And not now, I don't want to apply the changes. Let me go back in here and let me discard everything. Yes, I want to discard it and I want to start from scratch. Here we go. Now, first and foremost, I need to get my data again, so I can click on Get Data. In this case, one more time, I go to More, and I'm still using the From Folder option, but a little bit different. I click on this one, go to Connect, and then I need a folder path. The folder path itself is, in this case, again, my folder, which I'm referencing in here. I click on OK, and then there is the data itself. So these are the files. So, but this time, let me actually do it a little bit different. Let's click on Transform Data. And again, I have my two binary files, but this time we're going to handle those ourselves and don't let Power BI do this automatically. So in order to extract the data from binary files, we need to have a function to do this. And there's a function in Power BI which is called Excel.workbook. That means that I could actually add here a new column. If you go to Add Column in here and go to, in this case, Custom Column, like that, then we can create a column here. And in this case, I just type in Excel, does that correctly, .workbook. So this is the function. And if I open the parenthesis, I just need to put in my, in this case, content, because the content column contains the binary. So if I double click here and I close the parenthesis here, that's basically the formula. So let me just copy this and let's go to my editor. Let me just remove everything here and paste this. That's the function. So Excel.currentWorkbook. So actually, this is current workbook because it's current workbook, but actually it should be Excel.workbook should also work. This should be the function. Excel.workbook and then the content. So let me just copy this and let's go in here. Let me just paste this. Instead of current workbook, I'm using the workbook function, which is a little bit more broad. So you can see there are no syntax errors. Let's click on OK. And you see that we have a new custom column in here, which contains table. And the table itself contains the data. So the name of the sheet, also that it's a table. In this case, that item is a table and that is a sheet. So now what we could do is remove everything we don't need. And what I want to keep is actually only the name and this custom column for now. But before I do this, I can also expand the column. So if you click on the two arrows here, click on that, and you see that, let me just untick this original column as prefix, because this would just mean that I have now custom dot name, custom dot data, and so on. I want to get rid of the custom, so I untick this option here, and I click on OK. And now we have extracted actually the data inside the table, as you can see here, which is the item, the sheet, and so on. So all these things in here. So interesting, of course, for us is the data column, because this contains the table, and the table, as you can see down here, it's a little small, but this is actually the original values inside the table. So we need to get this data, but currently see there's also another issue that the headers here are not promoted. That's also something we need to actually clean up first. So let me go back and actually remove everything we don't need. So all I want to keep is actually the name, in this case, which is input 1, input 2. We don't need to keep it, but I'd like to actually know where the data is coming from. That's why I want to keep this column here. And I also want to keep, of course, this column, which contains the data, which is the data column. So if I hold my control key and select both of them, so select the first one, hold control key, select the second one, then we can right click on one of those and say we want to remove the other columns. Let's get rid of the other ones. So we only have the name in here and actually the original data in here. Next, we want to add an additional column. We could also write it directly in the M, but I think with the additional column, it's easier, I think. So if I go to custom column one more time, and this time, let's just call this maybe we want to promote the headers, And this is just what we want to try, or what we do now is the following. You can see here currently the data inside the table. And just to mention this, if you want to see what's inside this table here, this item, don't click on the table directly, click next to the table, okay, where it's empty space. Because if you do this, then you see here a little preview. And you see that there's a rating column, the year column, and the game column. Exactly what we would expect. But currently, this is not the header. The header is column 1, column 2, column 3. And what we want is actually we want to have the first row inside the header. Like the promote headers option, which exists inside the query editor under transform as well. But in this case, we need to do this for each table. So for each row in which we have. So in this case, we have 2 files. But if you have 10 files, we would have to do it for each table of each of the 10 files. And there is a function actually in M code, which is simply table dot, in this case, it's called promote headers. Promote headers. There it is. So you can just use this. So if you click on it, or now it's doubled, press on the tab key would also work. Just be aware that this won't interrupt that. So table.promote headers. And then we again do the same as with the Excel.workbook. We just put in parentheses, and you can see here it actually needs a table. And in this case, inside the data column, we have tables. So we just need to reference our data column. So if you double click here and close the parentheses here, you see that there are no syntax errors. And just to show you this a little bit bigger, just to mention this here. So let me go in here. So this time what I'm using is this function here. Table.promote headers for the data. So that just means go in each row of our current table in Power Query and then just promote the headers for the table itself. And if we do this, if I click on OK, now we see that we have a new column in here. And again, take a look. This was the original one with column 1, column 2, column 3, and then the names, the headers. And if I take a look at this one, click again, not on the table, but next to the table, you see that now we have the header actually now in the first row. Also the first row as a header. That's what I meant. And the same is true if you click to the next table, you can see that there's a game, rating, year, and then there's the drinks column. So that worked. That's fine. So now we can actually get rid of this one here. So right click here and say remove. Okay. And now actually I'd like to go inside this column here, inside the promote headers column. And now I want to extract actually the original names of the columns. So to do this, let me actually maybe duplicate this. So this is just one query currently. Let me just go in here. So we want to continue working with this. I need to duplicate it here. Referencing would just refer. And now let me click on duplicate. Reference here does not work because we want to modify this one later on without modifying our duplication. That's why I want to duplicate it here. So click on duplicate here. And now we have a second query. Now for the second query, I actually want to get rid of, in this case, this name here. So click on the table. That's already fine. So click on get rid of the name. Right click remove. And this time right click here and say click drill down. Because currently this is still a table. You can also see it with the table icon here. And I want to convert this into a list. So I can right click here and go to, in this case, drill down, this one. And now I have a list column here. So list, and there's a table. This is the first one, and this is the second one. Okay, so now we got our lists. And now in our last step, we want to apply a little bit of M code in order to get all the column headers from, in this case, those 2 files. But of course, if you have more than just 2 files, it would be exactly the same steps we're going to do now. So to do this, let's actually maybe rename this here. So we can right click here and click on rename here and call this, for instance, here extract headers. Extract headers. Okay, like that, for instance. So now we have here renaming here. So let's actually go back to the home here and say I want to go to the advanced editor. And here I'd like to actually now here go from my promote header step. So let me put in a comma here because only the last step does not include the commas. All the other steps include commas. And here I want to write something. So in this case, I name the step and I name it maybe here in this case, all headers, all headers. Here, that's my step. Of course, you can name this whatever you like. In just a minute, I'll show you this in Notepad so you can see that on a little bigger screen than here. But it's equal to. And just in case you're wondering, you can see here there's a pound symbol and then those exclamation marks for all the steps. If you don't have any spaces in the name of the current step, you don't need to have the pound symbol and the quotation marks. Those are only necessary if you have any kind of spaces in between, like that. Then I would have to write a pound quotation mark. If I have just one word together, that's not required. And now what I want to do is I want to apply, in this case, a few functions. So I want to extract the column names from each of those tables, and then I want to combine them. And to do this, combining them means I need to union them. Means I can use list.union. So it's just a function on a list, and we currently have a list column. So we want to union, and what do we want to union? Well, we want to union the column names. And this can be done by calling list.transform, because in order to union the column names, we first need to extract them from each of the tables we have. And this can be done using transform, because transform applies a transformation, so a function, on each element of the list. So let's do that. We need to put in here a list, and the list itself is, in this case, our last step, which is called here promote headers, this one. So let me just copy it from here, Control C, Control V to paste it in here. And then I put in a comma in here, and I want to apply it on each of the tables I have in the list. That's why I can't call the each keyword. It's a special keyword. That's why it's now in here in blue. And what I want to do is for each, the transformation I want to apply for each of the tables is simply table dot, in this case, column names. So there's a column names option, this one. And then I just need to tell it, okay, the column names of which table. And because I want to use each of the tables in here, there's a shortcut for that. Simply put it an underscore in here. And then, of course, in our last step here, so our output, the in just references the output. And the output should not be this step, but the last step. That's why we go in here, and I can put in all header instead of this one. Because depending on what we put in here, which of the steps do we want to see as the output, we can then reference also an earlier step if we want to do that. But in this case, I want to have the last one. So let me just copy this one to show this to you, because this is the part we have adjusted. And let's actually click on done just to see that this works. And you see that here we got a list now with all the different kinds of column names from all the files we have. In this case, we have 2 files. And we have rating, year, game, and also drinks, which is only part of the column is only part of the last file. And now if I just, let me show this to you first. Let's go in here and let me just paste this inside. So that's what we did. We added another step, which is all headers. Just be aware, if you add this step, please make sure that in the last step you have before, put in a comma at the end. Because the only step which does not contain a comma at the end is the last one. And because we added this step here, only this one doesn't contain a comma at the end. So what we did is we use the union function, list.union. And what do we want to combine? So union, we want to combine all the column names. So for each table, we extract the column names. So the underscore refers to each entry we have in the data set. So in this case, each of the elements. And the list.transform just means that we apply a function, which is this column names function, on, in this case, the last step we have. And for each element of the last step, because we have the underscore. It's, well, you have to get used to it, right? I admit that. But still, hopefully you understood what we did and to get the result we want to apply. So now we have actually here our list with all the names. So extract the headers. And this list here, this end result, so these all headers here, this can be used now also in our original query. Because if we go back to the original query here, we have now the option, of course, to go in here, right, like that. And we could extract this. So we could say, I want to now select the columns I have, in this case, all of them, that's fine. And I can say, yes, please extract columns, click OK. And we have it here. But this is an issue. Because so far, we could do this without the step we have done here with the extract headers. But the problem here is here. Promote headers here just means that now we're referencing rating, year, game, drinks, and then rating, year, game, drinks. So that means this would work as a folder here if we load this, but it would also result in an error if the column changes. Because let's me just do that first, okay? Let's click on close and apply for now. Close and apply. Reload the data. And we'll see that now we have here also the headers here because we also loaded them. We could exclude this from the loading. But for now, for the folder structure, we have drinks, game, name, rating, and year. So far, so good. We have all these columns. We didn't adjust any data type so far, but we can see the columns at least. So that's fine. But what if now, if I go to the file in here, for instance, for the input 2, I double click here, and now I have another column. Let's say, in this case, this column is food. Okay, food here. And the food is, well, let's say, whatever I want. I like to have now maybe a burger, right? Burger and something else, whatever, right? So let me just let's say pizza. Okay, I like pizza, so let's go with pizza. So let me just save this. In this case, we get now a new column in here. So let me just make this smaller here. And let's me go in here. And now let me click on refresh here. I'll refresh the data. And you see that this works fine. But the problem is that we have a new column, right? And this new column, I can't see it here. So where is the food column? And you see that we have exactly, currently at least, the same issue as we had with the combining files from folder. So this was not successful for us, right? So we have not included the new column. But what if we do the following? Let me actually go first. Let me just reopen this file. And let's actually get rid of this food one more time. Remove it to have original data. And let me just save this. Control S to save it. Let me close it. And let's go on here. One more time. Let's click on refresh. Okay, that works fine. So now let's go back to our transform data. And let's just modify one last thing. So we had a lot of work, at least a little bit of work, to use this specific function M, right? To extract a list of the column names. So this list is called extract headers because this is the last step. Now if you go back to the folder here, and now we just say table.expand columns, and instead of referencing here these promote headers, it's just a name, these ones here, so these ones and these ones, why not say now, at least for us, we just reference what we had in our, in this case, extract headers, this one here. So let's actually get rid of that, and that should move everything in here, which is hard-coded, right? So these are just hard-coded values, and this is actually the issue, so we don't have an option to get the new updates from the columns. And now let's put in extract here, extract headers. So this one here. So this is now our modification. So instead of saying directly, we want to have rating, year, game, and drinks, we just say we want to have extract headers, which is, in this case, referencing this list, and this list is dynamic. And I'm going to show you this in a minute. So at first, let's actually here put this here. Click on the checkbox here, and you see that this works. Click on close and apply for now, and we see that here we got actually the columns here, and we can still use them. So that's fine. But now let's actually try what I showed you just a minute ago. Let's actually go in here, go to my folder in here. There it is, and let's go to the second file. And now let's actually add the food column one more time. Let's go with food in here. And this food column now contains, for instance, here, as I said, pizza and burger. So let me just save it. Control S to save it. And let's just make this smaller here. Let's actually get rid of that. Let me close it. Otherwise, I could run into an error because the file is still open. So now it's saved, including the food. And let's just see what happens in here. So if I click on now refresh the data, click on refresh, and you see that now we have a new column which is called food. And this is automatically now part of our query. So now if the underlying data changes and a new column is added in one of the sheets, and it doesn't matter which one, it could be input number 1, input number 2, it doesn't matter. But we still have now this specific column referenced here. And the same is true, of course, if a column gets removed. So, for instance, currently you see that there's a food column, and maybe you are aware, maybe not, but if you use the normal way to import the data in Power BI, and you remove a column, then you also run into errors because the column is referenced in steps. And if Power BI is not able to find this column anymore because you have removed it, or someone else has removed it, then of course you also run into errors. And also this can be handled now, because we added the food column, and you see that the column appears if we refresh the data. But also, if I go in here, for instance in here, And let's say I want to get rid of the food column again. Get rid of the food column, remove it. And let's just save this for now. Control S to save it. And let's just close this here. And let me just show you that this also works. If I now refresh the data, refresh, you see that the data gets refreshed, the food column gets removed, and again, we have no issues. And this is a much more dynamic way, even though, of course, it involves a little bit of M code, I admit that, but still, now we have the data here inside Power BI. And of course, now we can dynamically change the data set without running into errors here, right? The only thing which you need to be aware of is, and I like to point this out as well, if you go to transform data in here in the last step, that currently you see that expand columns here, this last one, currently the data here is not, has not assigned a specific data type in here, right? So this, of course, you could do, but this is something where you need to be aware of. If you do that, then this step is hard-coded again. So I would only advise you to do this at the end of the query, right? To adjust here the data types. But as I said, this is a dynamic way to make sure that you have less errors than normally, especially if the data changes, and also it's a much more dynamic way than the files from folder. As I said, files from folder is a great way if the data is the same, but if the structure changes between the files, then you've seen that there are issues. And if also the files are more dynamic because you add columns or you remove columns, then this way could help you actually to avoid running into errors. So hopefully that was helpful. Thanks a lot for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.